Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Drak Reviews, where we're taking on another game that was actually kind of a surprise at E3 2017, and has also been a little bit of a surprise in its release, as we are reviewing A Way Out, made by Joseph Fares and Hazelight Studios, but also being published by Electronic Arts. So, first of all, I want to explain why this is such an interesting game, at least on the premise, because a lot of it's going to be part of the review, but I figure the hype around this needs to be explained first. The hype around A Way Out was that it not only is one of the other indie games that EA is trying to support, but unlike most games in the modern era, this boasted a complete co-op storyline. And I'm not saying that co-op hasn't been done in storylines in games. I mean, for crying out loud, old school beat-em-ups had co-op, at least a storyline with co-op in it. What this boasts is basically where it's more of a voluntary experience, because in a beat-em-up, you could still go through it on your own. But this one is saying, nope, 100%, you have to go through this story co-op. And that's kind of the boasting efforts and a lot of what this game tries to accomplish. That being said, let's go ahead and get into the review proper. Starting with the story centers around two people. Vincent Moretti, a average dude who was a banker who is now in jail for murder, or at least has been sentenced and all that. He is being sent to a prison to do his sentence in jail, where he meets thief Leo Caruso. And these are the two main players that you have. And the only thing they have in common, because again, Vincent had kind of a regular life, whereas Leo was a thief. You know, he was a professional criminal. So at that point, they probably would have never met in real life, but now they are tied by a similar bond, as they both want the same guy dead. The same guy actually kind of screwed them both by the name of Harvey, and they both want to take him out for their own reasons. I'm not going to explain that because it actually goes deeper into the story, but this actually causes them to team up to not only escape from prison and also get their revenge on Harvey, but also to try and solve any other situations that are going on in the game proper. So at that point, with the story, I'll be honest, I gave full marks. This is a story that is worth going through with a lot of twists along the way, especially since a lot of the twists can be dictated by you, the players. And by that, I mean, like, both of you can actually kind of dictate it through your own votes, as you can decide to do certain situations Leo's way or Vincent's way. And Leo's way is the more forceful criminal way. Vincent is more sensible. Vincent tries to not necessarily do things legal or ethical, but try to do things on the low. Whereas Vincent, he doesn't care who he offends, whereas Leo doesn't care who he offends and doesn't care who he hurts. So you can literally dictate the journey by having these different outcomes go out. I mean, the end result is the same, but you can have these different outcomes either complicate things for you or make things a little bit easier, and it actually can vary in different perspectives. Sometimes Leo's way is the right way to go about it if you don't want extra hassle. And there are also times where Vincent is right because you have to be a little bit more subtle. So I gave full marks on the story here. It was really well done, well put together. Moving on into the visuals. This is one of those things where I believe Hazelight had a goal here. They boasted the co-op story experience, and in order to be able to do that and do it right, I believe Hazelight had to make some decisions for the greater good, as it were. Am I saying that the visuals look bad? No, not by any stretch. I think they look good, especially for modern console standards. Are they, Horizon Zero Dawn standards or Uncharted 4? Not by any stretch. But they are at least passable to be able to work for modern day consoles. And again, I have a feeling that visuals weren't necessarily the focus here. It was the experience overall. And so at that point, they did actually have to had to cut some corners, as it were, to be able to fulfill their goal. And in this case, it didn't hurt them because the visuals, again, are passable. They're not bad by any stretch. I didn't have any bugs or anything like that kind of hurt the experience. But are they the greatest graphics that you've seen on modern day consoles? No, not really, but they work. So with that being said, I really didn't take any points off for visuals because I, again, kind of understand what Hazelight is trying to do. Their goal was to fulfill this task. Moving on into gameplay, we have kind of a similar issue. Gameplay is not bad by any stretch. There's a lot of QuickTime events. There's a lot of stuff where you have to work together. There is some shooting mechanics in here eventually when you try to go take out Harvey. But the one thing that a lot of veteran players might notice is things are fairly basic in the gameplay department. They're not necessarily too built upon. And again, where I'm making that sound like a bad thing, it isn't. Because again, for the greater good, I have a feeling that in order to make this co-op experience work the way they wanted to, they had to make things as basic as they could so that everything would run and run properly. Especially when they boasted the concept of you don't both have to be veteran players. You can have a brand spanking new player come and help you out. And it works. It really does. Like I brought in my wife, who has played shooters from time to time, but it hasn't been like her main focus. So at that point, I was kind of more the veteran thing because I'm doing these reviews and I play some of them for my spare time. This was more of a casual thing for her. And so at that point, it worked for both of us, and we didn't necessarily get held back by the other in those cases. So I have a feeling that the gameplay was made that way so that the co-op experience could still work. And since this was an experiment, at least the way that Hazelight points it out, then that's exactly what they should have done, and I really didn't take any points off for gameplay. Because again, I know where their focus is, and I know that they had to cut some corners. And in this case, it was actually a worthwhile decision to do so that they could continue to work on the co-op experience. Moving on into audio. This is, again, another situation where I don't have too many complaints, as the voiceover work sounds really great. The people who play Leo and Vincent sound spot on as the way that they need to sound. So at that point, it works for them, and their interactions work as well. The music, it's not really all that observable, but when it is, it works for the situations. A lot of, kind of doldrums kind of music in the middle of jail, but then also kind of hyping things up when you're on the run. So it all works together. So, again, minor points are kind of taken because there are points where, again, it's kind of generic, but not in a bad way because, again, the focus was towards making this co-op experience work. So in that case, like, points were taken off, and I actually will admit, like, with gameplay, I did take a little bit off, but for the greater good, I can see what they were doing and that it worked out. Replayability. This is where I had to take a little bit off, but for one sole reason. After one playthrough of this game, I mean, you're pretty much incentivized to do a second playthrough without doing spoilers here. You're incentivized to do one more playthrough just to see things from another perspective, but you're not incentivized to play further than that. And it's just because the story is kind of limited. It lasts for a total of 6-7 hours. So at that point, it's not necessarily, it's not Horizon Zero Dawn or Breath of the Wild by any means, but it fulfills what it needs to do. But I have to take points off because the replayability factor isn't really here. And for those who are looking to replay this over and over and over and over again, while it might be a cool little party trick to do occasionally when you have your friends over, after that first playthrough, I actually see a lot of people just going to YouTube to see the other outcome that can happen in a lot of these situations. So with that being said, let's move on into presentation. Does it all work together to fit into a neat package? Yes, it does. I can honestly say it does, even though things look pretty basic and the story is not necessarily the biggest. The purpose here was to try and make a co-op story experience work. And at that point, I'm going to say that, in my opinion, Hazelight has made that work. Joseph Fares has been able to make that work to the best of his ability. I mean, I was actually kind of shocked, to be honest with you. I honestly didn't think that Joseph Fares and Hazelight Studios were going to be able to pull this off. I thought it was a fool's dream, a fool's effort to be able to try and do it. But wow, I got proven wrong. And I have no problem giving this game a final score of 9 out of 10. While there are some things that are basic, I do think that there's still room for improvement. And now that you have the formula down, Hazelight, I would like to see you do this again. Except now, do it with modern standards. Do it with better graphics. Refine the gameplay. Give a little bit of an edge to your different players in the experience. Now that you have that basic formula down, let's go nuts with it. So at that point, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, and that's just because I think there's tons of room for growth and that they accomplished at least the goal that they were looking to accomplish. But is it worth it? Currently, you can get A Way Out for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC, and it is for the fairly cheap price of $29.99. Is it worth it at that price? I actually think it is. I do think it was a good idea to not go for a $59.99 price tag for this. It wouldn't have been worth it. But with the pricing that they have, it is perfect if you're looking to get this thing brand new. I would still recommend if you can get it on a deal like via Steam, like where it's 25 or 20, that would still work. But $30 is not necessarily a big sacrifice for what you're going to get out of this game. And yeah, I recommend the $30 if that's what you have to pay for it. So that's going to go ahead and do it for this review of A Way Out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for your continued love, support, and patience with the channel. I really do appreciate it, especially during difficult times. And of course, I'll be back in time for the next review.